Welcome to Equilibrium Echoes, the podcast where we delve into the transformative power of your inner world on your relationships. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker. Join me as we unlock the secrets of emotional equilibrium and dig deep into the tools and insights needed to foster healthier, more fulfilling relationships in ways that feel safe and authentic. Welcome back to Equilibrium Echoes. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker, and I'm here today with a guest that I am very excited to talk to. I met Emily Hawkins just about a week ago, and we hit it off right away. The topic for this podcast was so immediately evident in our conversation, and I can't wait to dig in. So Emily is a fractional COO. She's the founder of Leader Shift, and today we're going to talk about how to have hard conversations. When we were discussing this a week ago, this conversation, we both sort of landed on this topic because we realized that there are many of us, myself included, who kind of grew up not knowing how to have hard conversation. And yet that's so foundational to success in life, in pretty much every area of our lives. So Emily, thank you so much for being here today.
I am so excited to be here and talk about this. I hope that people that are listening hear the words hard conversations. And I don't know about you, but my hands get all sweaty. Like I'm like, oh.
Yes. Yes. I immediately think of those like awkward moments when you don't know what to say and tensions are high. And it's like, for me, I am an avoider. I would rather avoid those conversations altogether. That would be my preferred method. But I've learned over the years that doesn't really work all that well.
No, that
not over the long haul anyway.
Life. Yes, exactly.
Right. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll get right into this topic of hard conversations.
Sure. So I am a fractional COO. Most people are like, what is that? So it is basically the operations. I'm a fractional COO, so the operations of a business, helping small businesses that can't afford a full-time COO really streamline their processes, their people, and their systems to make sure that they're saving as much money as they can. I'm about keeping money in the business. I think of businesses as almost like those strainers that we put pasta in. And we love it to get the water out of the pasta, but we want to keep the pasta. And I like to think of that as the money in your business, but I want as little straining out as possible. But what is straining out makes sense for your business and actually has some sort of ROI for you. But it's not just about that. There are a lot of things that go into that process. And my goal is to simplify this for any small business, because I can tell you right now that if you are a small business owner, you have everything you need sitting inside your business. You just need somebody like me to be like, there it is, right there and right there. And my goal is to empower you so that you're keeping more money in your business, your team is excited and productive, and you're working less.
Love it. So what was your personal journey like with learning how to have hard conversations? Because you shared with me when we talked earlier that this is something that comes up a lot for you in work and in coaching with your clients and things like that. So what was your personal journey like in learning how to do this and do it the right way?
100%. Well, I will be perfectly honest, in everything that I teach, it's something that I did poorly first. And so I screwed up and did some things the wrong way. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I learn by doing, and I learned the right way as well, which is great. So I want to go back to when I was in the corporate world. So I was in the corporate world for 15 years. I have an MBA in global business. I have an undergrad in supply chain, basically streamlining operations, right? Like this is my bread and butter. It's my jam. And I was great at what I did. And in my journey, I got the opportunity to manage people. Well, I assumed that everyone worked like I did. So all I got was, a team of people that would just magically be productive. And I will say that I created a revolving door in my office where I was just churning through people, because assumption is the root of all evil. I don't care what anybody says. Assumption is not good. The majority of us, I've read so many studies on assumption, and the majority of us just, a clinical term, suck at it. We are so bad at assuming. We typically assume the wrong direction. And one of the greatest ways to stop assuming is to create clarity for yourself and then, of course, for other people. So for me, this horrible opportunity, I say opportunity now, it was a horrible situation at the time. I felt like I had people on my team that just weren't doing anything. I was the leader. It was my fault. But at the time, it was easier to blame other people. So I locked myself in my office at work and I started a document, Dream Employee. And I wrote down everything that I wanted this employee to be. And I started it with, they will never be late. They will never blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, if this is a dream employee, why am I writing things I don't want? This is the exact opposite of what I want. So I deleted everything out. And then I started writing, what is it that I do want? What are conversations I want us to have? How do I want them to take this specific organization to the next level? How do I want them to help me think through things? Like, what is it that I want? And so I ended up with 2 pages that I was super, super excited about for about 2.5 seconds until I realized, if that amazing soul shows up at my door, am I the right person to lead them? And I can tell you right now, the answer was no. And I knew it was no. And at the same point, I read about 26 books trying to figure out how to change everyone on my team but myself. Spoiler alert, all 26 books are like, you are the power of change. You are the one that needs to change. And I didn't want to hear that, right? So I just kept reading other books. Slow learner. And that was when it hit me like, oh my gosh, I have all these little nuggets from all these things that I've been reading. And it's time for me to lead the way I know I should be and stop trying to be every leader I've seen. I kept trying to emulate what I thought a leader was rather than just be what felt natural to me. So that was in 2015 when I turned over that new leaf. This was in December. And 2016, I was able to hire, January, I was able to hire about half of my team, a different group of people. They all fit that dream category. And within 90 days, we were the most productive team in the organization. And I got bored because everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing. And by the way, it was a lot of hard conversations in a lot of places, which we'll get to. And in that time, those very people said, you should be helping other people. They would bring other people in the organization to me to help me clarify things and help them have hard conversations and also just strategize. Like, what do you want in your life? What strategy, where do you want in your career? Give them books to read and things like that. And then I felt a little disingenuous. Like it felt a little wrong that I was the head of planning and procurement and I was giving coaching advice like I was in HR or something like that. I just was like, this doesn't feel right. And so in 2017, I actually left that organization and I had a goal of helping 100 people. And since that time, I've helped 2,500 people. And in 2020, I was featured in Forbes for my work. I was dreaming very small. And I also don't think I realized how massive this problem that I had was. It's rampant. It's everywhere. And everything that I did to make that team productive, I've now helped 2,500 people and businesses using these very simplistic tools. I want it to be very, very simple so that you're spending less time at work. And it really does start by letting go of those assumptions, because that was one of the biggest drivers for me anyway, was assuming.
So how do those assumptions show up? Like, how do we identify when we're making assumptions? Because I think we do it subconsciously. Sometimes we don't even realize. Like, so how do we sort of tune into that and realize like, oh, these are the assumptions I'm making, and see how that is affecting our lives?
So it's interesting. We all have movies in our head that are constantly playing. And if you went into your head right now, it wouldn't just be like, hi, I'm Alyssa, right? It would be the story up to this point. So there's so much that colors our assumption. Good and bad relationships, things that happened in our childhood, whether our parents were there or not, friendships, good and bad, who has wronged us, work things. All of that is this narrative in our head that is, it actually forms BS. And let me describe what BS is. It's actually a belief system. So I love when you look at the word or the two words belief system, and it actually just is the BS. I think that's hilarious because it's true. The only thing that I know that is true in my narrative is that gravity is real. That's it. I can't think of pretty much anything else that my belief system is 100% accurate on. So one of the things that I do for myself is whenever I find myself, making any decision or this assumption, is saying, what part of this is real? What part of this can I, objectively like look at an email and see that somebody at 9:52 told me blah blah blah. That would truly be a fact because I've got it in writing. And then what part of it is it me saying, well, I feel like I know that person. And because I feel like I know that person, then the reason they did X, Y, and Z was blah, 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 blah. Like, you don't actually know that unless they specifically told you that. So I would say that 95% of the things that you think on a daily basis are built on assumptions. And some of those are good assumptions. I don't want us to say that all assumptions are bad. I assume that when I go to bed tonight, that I will wake up tomorrow morning. I don't think that there's really any reason for me to question that or kind of get my head about that or anything like that.
Right.
I also know how to drive a car, and I assume that it's going to be the same every time. Where it gets sticky is when we start throwing otherness into it, other people, other relationships. That's where our assumptions can go very awry. And so that's really, if it's to deal with a thing, you're probably right. Like, go ahead and do the thing. It's fine. Assume that the trash man will show up on Wednesday and that you should have your trash by the curb. But if it's about an action that you want to take, whether it's in your business or you want to have that hard conversation, think about what you're saying and what's that narrative in your head about that specific person.
Right. Especially when we're assigning intention or, a meaning to what someone else said or did that they didn't actually say or do. Like, I love that you said, if it's in a dated email, I know that that's a fact. But if it's, someone said, even when someone says something to you directly, we can have 27 different possible interpretations of that. And I love the idea of like stopping and saying, okay, hold on. There's more than one interpretation of that. And I can't assume that I know which one they intended when they said that. Mm-hmm. So let's define hard conversations. Like when we say, we're going to learn how to have hard conversations. What specifically are we talking about?
I would say that a hard conversation is conflict in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think conflict is bad, by the way. I think that if we're not having conflict, things don't change. If you read any story, good, nonfiction or fiction, why do we love reading those stories? Because there's some sort of conflict. And conflict can be a variance in opinion or how to, streamline a solution or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's the first step because for me personally, I am very much like you, an avoider of conflict because for some reason in my head, the conflict is all because I'm wrong or there's something wrong with me. When in reality, it actually has nothing to do with that, right? It's just a natural, like, let's have this conversation and understand both sides and probably come up with a better solution. So conflict is really just not fully agreeing or feeling on the same page with someone or some idea. That's it.
Yes. And like you said, most of that, I think for me, most of my trepidation about hard conversations comes from something that I fear or something that I believe. Like somehow this is going to
end up badly for me, or somehow they're going to think something negative about me. And that's again all about that internal movie that you were just talking about. Like, this is all me. It's not necessarily them. Most of the time when I do have these conversations, I'm actually pleasantly surprised how well it goes. Not always. Sometimes it blows up like I feared it would, or I thought maybe it would. But the majority of the time, I find that I really didn't have as much to be concerned about or afraid about as I thought I did.
Well,
would you say that's true?
100%. Because here's the thing. If you tell me something that's hard, like, hey, Emily, you were on my podcast and it was really great, but I can't air the episode because you were swearing a lot and we don't do that on the show. Oh my gosh, can we re-record? Thank you so much for telling me that. I didn't know that beforehand. Sure, let's do that. That would not be a fun conversation to have. But at the same time, I know now something that I didn't know before. And so now I can do better. I love Maya Angelou's quote, when you know better, you do better. And that's exactly what these hard conversations allow people to do.
Right. And if I were to say that same thing to you, like, I can't air this episode, and your response was to be angry with me, that says more about you than it does about me.
Exactly.
Like, I don't have to go into that afraid of your reaction because I don't have to take that personally. I think that's a big part of learning how to have these conversations, is learning that not everything that comes out of someone else's mouth is something you have to believe or you have to take personally or you have to assign value to.
Oh my gosh, 100%. 100%. And, you know, that's something else to think about, is that does whatever is said to you or whatever, does it really fit your values? Does it fit your morals? Because I have, you know, as a business owner, I've taken many marketing courses, sales courses, things like that. And some of those just don't resonate with me because I'm like, that's not who I am, right? Like, there's certain things I can take from it, but I just don't operate that way. And so that's how I like to think when somebody gives me advice or coaching of some kind that they feel I need. Maybe that's something that does not fit my morals and ethics, or it's just not part of who I am. But being able to divorce the two and say, okay, is this really what I want? Or am I just trying to appease this person? You know, that's something I personally struggled with as well, because I am a reformed people pleaser. I was raised in a house where it was very important to be a certain way. And if you were not this specific way, then it was deemed not right, you know, not correct. And using that word just makes me laugh because, like, I don't even know what correct is, you know? I think there's a million ways to be, and I think they're all fine. Right. But I learned at an early age, you know, if I wanted attention, especially from my mother, that I needed to be a certain way. And then unfortunately, that survival tactic I carried with me throughout my career. And as that leader was trying to be these things that everybody wanted me to be. And when I finally dropped that facade is when everything changed.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's get into the nuts and bolts. Like, we have this hard conversation we need to have. Like, what is the right way to do it? How do we approach this? Let's talk about some really practical things that you have learned about these hard conversations.
100%. So one of the things that I always tell my clients to do, my business owners to do, is write down. You can write it. You can make an email out of it. Don't send it to anyone. Exactly how you feel. Like, let's just get all the feelings out, because I think it's important to honor how you feel. Regardless of what the person actually meant by it, it felt a certain way to you. And so sometimes it takes business owners a couple times of doing this because they're like, well, I love everybody on my team, or I don't want to see the bad in people. And I'm like, right, I get that. I'm totally on board with it. But right this second, embrace the suck. That's what I call this. Embrace the suck. Blame whoever. Blame the government. I don't care. I always have them put about 5 minutes on the clock. So it's not like I want you to do this for, 3 days. You do not involve other people. This is your own private pity party with this thought, feeling, emotion. what I love about writing a letter to this specific person is that you can really get your feelings out. If you want to use expletives, go for it. If you want to, say nice things, whatever feels right to you. The main reason I do that is because there are clues in there as to what's actually going on. And also you fully feel the feeling. I don't want you to walk away from it and just constantly band-aid it and say everything's okay. Everything's not okay. And that person did bother you in some way, shape, or form, or, there's a conflict here, right? So then usually I ask them to share the letter with me. Again, I'm not going to send this to anybody. I'm not going to, they'll either read it to me or they'll email it to me. And I always can find a little pattern of actual objective sort of thoughts. Like, Tuesday at 4 p.m., you said this. They probably did, that probably did occur. And then we use that as the framework for asking questions. So rather than coming in and saying, Alyssa, you really pissed me off. I can't believe that you sent this email to our client. That was our internal pricing. What were you thinking? I don't know about you, but you're not going to be real happy. You're going to be on the defensive. I mean, that's just a tense discussion. And what I have found is if we drop the assumptions, because all of that was based on assumption, right? And we become scientists instead, so much more comes out of this conversation. And so I typically have people start with whatever the issue is, but in a very simple way. So for instance, I have a client that sends out a weekly goals email and nobody's responding to him. And in the email, it's like, these are our weekly goals, respond. Nobody's responding. He wanted to send another email, an angry email to everybody on his team. And I was like, well, first of all, if they're not responding, maybe something's going on with email. Like maybe they're not reading email. So don't choose that. I also don't believe that anything conflict wise is handled well through text, email, written word in general, like messenger pigeon, none of that. Don't do that.
Yes.
A conversation where you're looking someone in the eye, a Zoom meeting if they're far away, or even a phone call. I mean, just something where you can hear their voice because that matters. Tone matters. And you just start with, in this instance, tell me a little bit about what's preventing you from responding to the weekly goals email. So I'm just asking a question, like what's preventing you? And it's amazing what this specific business owner thought was the problem was not the problem at all. He thought the problem was respect and all these other things. And he owns an auto body shop. Nobody checks email. They don't check email. They're just not email people. And so we're in the process of creating a Slack channel and a Slack app for them so that there's no email anymore. So much easier to communicate. And half the office is like, oh my gosh, what a great idea. They're so excited about this new thing. And it had zero to do with that. But I want to share that that was just question one. I actually have people that I work with ask a series of 7 questions. And you're not allowed to answer anything. You're only allowed to ask the questions, which is so hard.
Yes, that's really hard, especially, I mean, if we move out of the workplace for a second and into like an intimate personal relationship, a spouse, a partner, that gets even harder because we're so emotionally invested in that. So why do you say that? Why is that the rule?
Because every single question, and I want to run through them, they're so basic that you'll be like, you've got to be kidding me. But the reason is because each question gives you a little bit more of the story that you didn't have previously. And again, what happens if I said to you, if you asked me one question and I said something to you and you ran with that one thing, you're going to miss so many other opportunities, so many other pieces to the puzzle. And so I find it really, really important to ask all 7 before you try to help in any way, shape, or form. And there's a little bit of self-coaching that happens here as well, where if there's an issue, such as the situation that I was just referring to, they are going to give you more information about what's going on a grander scale. And there's a know, like, and trust factor. There's just so many things about these 7 questions that I love, because it just gets you out of the educating, band-aiding, fixing right away. Oh, I'm sorry, I was late today. Oh, well, let me give you a Google map. Like, have you used Waze? Like, we just want to fix everything. And I feel I'm all about fixing. Don't get me wrong. I do that for a living, but not without asking a lot of questions first so that I'm fixing the right thing.
Yes, that's really key, isn't it? Like we can't really fix it until we actually know what the real problem is. And we skip over that so often. We try to fix based on our assumption, like we were talking about earlier, instead of fixing what the actual problem is.
100%. And so what this does is it lets the person really get out what's truly going on. Because here's the other thing, and you know this too. We do it in our marriages every day, right? We have an argument about the dishwasher. Y'all, the argument is not about the dishwasher. Nobody could care less about your dishwasher. Mm-hmm. There's an underlying current of something that has not been addressed that's actually causing the dishwasher argument that you have on a regular basis. The dishwasher is just like this safe thing to talk about. Right. That's sort of innocuous. When you don't go on the defensive and you just keep asking questions, it's like peeling the layers of an onion, and just being a scientist and just, so what's that about? And again, we'll go through it. So let's pretend for a second that you have the same situation that this guy did. Technically, this would be 8 questions because you're going to start with, could you tell me what's preventing you from showing up on time? Could you tell me a little bit about, why you were late today, right? We're just asking a question, but we're not hiding what we're looking for, right? Like we're very honest about that. I don't care what this person says. The very next thing you ask them is, what's on your mind? And it might seem so random, and the answer you get back will be equally as random. What happens is, earlier I was telling you about that movie that I have playing in my head, that Alyssa has playing in her head, that you have playing in your head. This is where they start letting you into that movie. What's on your mind? Well, my husband and I have been having a lot of arguments lately, and we had one last night and I couldn't sleep and I woke up late, and I'm sorry. And that's, why I'm late. So the next question is, what's the real challenge for you here? And what's fascinating to me is, again, you are not coming in with fixes and let me give you a book to read and none of that. You're just continuing to ask questions. So what's the real challenge for you here? It's amazing to me how much more information you'll get, how just more information pulls out of this person. I had somebody on my team that she was my marketing person, and she was chronically missing deadlines. So I asked her, can you share a little bit more about why you're missing deadlines? And then she was like, I know, I'm so sorry. I try to do too many things, and I love working with you, and I think you're so great. And I was like, well, just what's on your mind? I made it very conversational. She shares with me, I'm running a couple of other businesses, social platforms and that kind of thing. And then I said, what's the real challenge for you here? And she's like, it's time blocking. I'm really, really struggling with time blocking. Again, that is a trigger word for me. I want to go right in and fix it, right? Like, oh, let's build a time block. So I sit on my hands and I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. So then I went into question 3. What do you want? And what's so interesting about question 3 is you're probably going to get a little bit of silence. Do not fill it. Let it sit.
Yes. Yes.
Let it burn.
So important. Learn how to be comfortable with the silence.
Because that's honoring that person's space. And sitting with it and just letting them think about it for a second, they will come up with something that they really want. And again, related to whatever you're talking about, they're gonna come up with something. Again, back to the email situation, they were like, I just don't want it to come to me through email. Like, that's what they asked for. I don't want it to come through email. That's all I care about. Well, that's pretty simple. The next question is shocking. And I want to share with you what happened in the marketing conversation. So the next question is, and what else? 3 words, and what else? So you ask, what do you want? And then the very next question, whatever they say, is, and what else? I was floored by what happened with the marketing person on my team when I said, and what else? She opened up to me that she had just started divorce proceedings with her husband. That was not something that I knew anything about. She had not shared publicly. She had shared with like 3 people. But because I didn't try to come in and Band-Aid and I gave her space, she felt safe enough to share this. And then in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not a time blocking issue, right? This is so much deeper. And I'm so glad I didn't try to Band-Aid it. And then she opened up and shared all these things. The very next question is, how can I help? Which is very different than what we normally do, right? We usually just jump right in with saving and, all of that, rather than asking, how can I help?
Right.
And what was so great in this instance was she was saying, well, actually, you're sending me everything correctly, that, it helps me work. Is there a way that you could check in with me every Wednesday? Heck yes, I can. Of course I can do that. I would love to do that, right? So that was the only thing that I said in terms of something other than a question, like, of course. And then the next question seems odd, but when you're asking somebody for help and they give you that help, they say, like, these are the things I'm going to do. The next question is, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? This is another one where you might have to sit in a little bit of silence, because everything is a trade-off. And there are only so many hours in a day. There are only so many things that one person can accomplish. So if you are saying yes to this task, opportunity, whatever, what are you saying no to? And again, you are not coaching on this. They are coaching themselves. And they're having to think through all these things that most of us would want to sit somebody in a chair and lecture them on, and it's going to go at their face and down and not in. So this helps them think through, what is it that I really want, and what am I willing to give up in order to have this thing? And then the final question is, what did you find most helpful or useful from our conversation? And that's how you properly handle conflict when it comes to wanting to fully understand someone. And then, of course, let's say that they go completely off the rails and they're like in another land. You could schedule time to reconvene and talk about the next issue. And the reason I say that is it's really nice for them to have a moment, a space, all their own, where they don't feel attacked. You've built a lot of trust here. You know so much more. Your assumptions are very different than they were before. And now you can go in and you can ask things from more of an educated perspective. And if you don't have that opportunity, then instead of asking question 7, you could easily say, thank you so much for sharing all this. I had absolutely no idea. And I'm so happy that we had this conversation. I'd like to dive a little deeper on, and then what is the topic that you want to dive deeper on? What is it that you don't feel like you've already gotten information about? And ask them if that would be okay. Because that way you're inviting them in and letting them say, they might say, you know what? Yes, but could we do it tomorrow? I mean, I don't know. Most people are like, yes, but this way it kind of gives them the opportunity. And then you can go deeper. And what I would recommend here is starting with you and how you feel in a situation. When I love to tell people about the stories that I tell, because I tell some like whoppers in my head. And I might say something like, when you come in late, the story I'm telling myself is that you don't care. And I don't actually know if that's true or not, but that's the story I'm telling myself. And it makes me feel so bad because I just see all these wonderful things that you're doing. Could you tell me a little bit more? And then again, you've already built this trust, and then you're letting them into the fact that you know that whatever you're thinking is probably not accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which helps get their resistance down, right? And their defensiveness down, because they know that you're setting the tone right away for like, I'm not here to attack you.
Exactly.
So what do you do? What do you do in a situation where you have already done all this wrong with someone, right? Mm-hmm. Defenses are already high, resistance is high. You've been cycling through the same argument. Mm-hmm. What do you recommend? How do you break that cycle and start doing it differently especially when the other person is already kind of prickly, mm-hmm. When it comes to your interactions?
Well, I think this is a perfect way of fixing it. These 7 questions, because why that probably occurred is because you immediately jumped to defense or teaching or whatever else rather than hearing them out first. So just have a listening session with them, right? You're just asking them questions and you're listening. And say, I'd like to have a listening session with you. I'm not going to say anything. I just want to ask you some questions. And I want to hear you out. I'm not going to have any defense. I'm not going to say anything. That's not what this is all about. I just want to make sure that I really hear you. I don't know anybody on earth that wouldn't want to really be heard. And it's amazing how much people open up when you don't get into the defensive. It's not going to be helpful.
Yeah. And you have to, when you say that, you have to stick to it, right? You're doing yourself a disservice if you present the conversation that way and you can't follow through and keep your mouth shut.
If that's the case, then yes, it will be very hard, right? To have a conversation where they might say, well, the last time you said that, you didn't do that, then you'll say.
Then you have to defend the fact that you like, man, it gets sticky, doesn't it?
So is all of life, right? And what are we without trying it again, mm-hmm. and doing it again? I always think of the invention of the light bulb. Well, I've read that was 10,000 failures before it was actually a light bulb. Well, sometimes it takes us messing up in relationships a few times to do it right. Now, I don't think 10,000 is a good number, but we're all human, right?
Right. So do you have any strategies or like tips for that, like managing that internal urge to just, I gotta say something because they, whatever, like, especially if you feel like they've said something that reflects negatively on you or creates a big emotional reaction in you. Do you have some tips for like managing your own internal narrative while you are having this listening session with someone?
I read that some big execs wear rubber bands on their arms and they flick themselves when they feel that urge, because it's like they need a wake up call of like, don't do this. Don't go there. I also want to think about it. So before the age of 25, the cause and effect parts of our brain are not fully developed. So when we're 16, 18, 20 years old, we say things that we just don't think about, Mm-hmm. Any of us that have teenagers know this very well, right?
Yes, we do.
But we are fully formed adults. I would think that the majority of the people that are listening to this are over the age of 25. And so we get this beautiful opportunity to think through it before it happens. So will me interjecting right this second help or harm this person continuing to open up to me? Is this helpful or is it going to be harmful? Do I just want to feel like I have an upper hand? Or do I want to actually hear this person out?
Right. Yes. Keeping the eye on the goal, which is improving the relationship and navigating whatever the particular circumstance is, has to be more important than feeling right in the moment or feeling powerful in the moment. That is not easy, but it is possible. It is doable, isn't it?
It is. And here's the thing. If this person is truly malicious or harmful, then have the conversation by all means. But nobody's saying you have to keep that person in your life or as an advisor in your life. And that's beautiful. We always have that choice. We always have the power of choice. If it's a boss, start looking for jobs. If it's a marriage, go to a counselor without that other person to kind of work out your own feelings before you make those choices. It's something I did. I was married. I've been married twice. I'm happily married now, but first marriage went to counseling, and it was so helpful to work out those feelings without throwing daggers at somebody else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember in season 1 of the show, I was talking to a woman who does helps couples navigate conflict in their relationships, and she said something that really stuck with me. She said, "Healthy relationships are really a big ego burn. Like if you're not willing to deal with the ego burn, you're not going to get to the healthy relationship part." And it's so true. Like when you are trying to navigate these conflicts and these relationships in a healthy way, like ego has no place in that. It's never going to be productive to allow your ego to drive the conversation.
It's so true. And I love that you said that, because it goes back to that I'm right, you're wrong. Why does that matter? Does it really matter?
Right. And who defines right and wrong anyway?
Exactly. I found myself when my son was 3. My daughter, I have a daughter who's 3 years older than my son. When I had her, I thought I was the best mother on earth. And then I found out, no, she's just like super mellow kid because my son is nothing like this. And we all joke that he's going to be a lawyer because he cross-examines everything. And he also loves to tell you, like, Alyssa, the sky is green. Right. And yes. I just want to argue with that. And then he was 3. And I realized in that moment, why does it matter if he thinks the sky is green? It really doesn't. It does not affect me. It actually has nothing. He will be safe. He will be fine thinking the sky is green. And so a lot of the times I realized it was an ego move. And it seems silly, but it was an ego move for me to be like, the sky is blue. It's always been blue. And you need to understand that it's blue. It's just not worth it, right? It was like, he's going to figure it out. It's fine. So.
Yes. Oh, kids are great at reminding us of these things. My daughter's 4. We were having a conversation the other day about the grass being green because we're just, preschool stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And she looks out the window, and I'm in South Texas. She looks out the window and she goes, "No, Mom, it's brown." And I was like, okay, fair point. Because outside her window, actually, the grass is brown. And I could have argued with her that, no, your little preschool workbook says it's green. But I was like, okay, so there is more than one. It just reminded me, it's like this, it's an example of there's more than one interpretation. And
100%.
Right, as I see it, might not be someone else's experience. Mm-hmm. And it was really good, like a good visual for me to kind of take with me and be like, okay, well, you know what? Just because the textbook says the grass is green, experientially for her, it was brown in that moment. And she was not wrong about that.
Well, and something I I love how people think. I love understanding how people think, especially people that think different than me, because there's always something to learn there. And so I chronically find myself saying to anyone that has a different way of thinking than I just love your thought process. Like, I might not totally agree with the thing that you came out with, but I love how you thought that through, because how you got there is pretty freaking cool. And if we could do that again, and I'll ask you questions, I'm seeing things differently because I'm using the way you think. And that's really exciting to me.
Right. And that's about learning to value and appreciate the different perspectives and the different opinions of the people around us. And I love how your questions lead into that. Like it's about uncovering and discovering those things about the other person rather than being accusatory and trying to defend our assumptions, which is sometimes what we do. We go into a conversation like trying to defend what we already believe to be true instead of being curious and exploring.
Exactly. And by the way, the majority of conflict is not life-threatening. It's not, something that's just really horrible. Like you ran over my child or something. Like, it's not, the majority of our conflict is not like that. It's, Alyssa, the other day you said this thing and I'm not really sure what you meant by it. Or I'm supposed to be a part of this group, but I don't know exactly what my area of expertise is in helping lift this project. And those are questions that people struggle with on a daily basis. Where do I fit? Am I valued? Do you see my value? I mean, that's really what it all comes down to.
Yeah.
And talking through that can, for some reason, it feels very scary. And I think it's because we're always afraid that somebody's going to say, actually, you don't have value. And I have yet to have a hard conversation where somebody says that to me. Not a single person has ever said that to me.
Yeah. I love that. What a great way to wrap up. So Emily, tell people how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you online, and how they can connect with you.
Definitely. So you can find me at Emily Hawkins, the number 4, the letter U.com. I'm also every social platform, Emily Hawkins, the number 4, the letter U. So type it in on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You'll find me that way. And then also something that we didn't get into, but I think is really relevant to this conversation. We were just talking about different viewpoints, and everyone's got a different viewpoint. And as a business owner in particular, we have different viewpoints. And I think that's unique and special and wonderful, and also has pitfalls. Every single one of them does. There are 4 types that I've identified with the 2,500 people that I've worked with. And like I said, there's good and bad, because there's good and bad with everything, right? And if you go to emilyhawkinsforyou.com/type, you can take a 7-question assessment. Very simple questions about how you communicate, how you would handle certain things in your organization, and it will give you your type. Not only will it give you the wonderful things about it, but some of the pitfalls, and then it's also going to give you some shifts that you can make in your communication. And what I would recommend is taking this, especially if you're a business owner, and sharing it with your team. But I wouldn't share the good. I'd share the bad. Share with them just the pitfalls page. Hey, I just took this assessment and it said my pitfalls are this. And it said that I should put these 3 shifts into place. Trying to keep it really simple for anyone listening. Again, I don't know about you, but if my boss came to me, I mean, I'm my boss right now, but in the corporate world, if my boss had come to me and said, hey, I took this assessment and these are the pitfalls with it. Here's how I need to shift. How can you help me with this? Oh my gosh, I would love to help that person so much. And so it's just a great way to build up your team. It goes back to what Alyssa was saying earlier about letting go of that ego. And so you can find that again at Emily Hawkins, the number 4, the letter U.com/type.
Excellent. Well, we will put all of Emily's links in the podcast notes. You can check there to click through to any of her social media, her website, and that assessment. Thank you, Emily, so much for being here with us. What a great conversation.
Thank you, Alyssa. It was so fun talking all things conflict.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. I'm Alyssa Decker, and I'll see you next time on Equilibrium Echoes. Thanks for listening to another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker, and I want to take a moment right at the end of this episode to invite you to join the book launch team. I'm putting together a team of individuals who not only want a free copy of Relationships Are Hard and Other Lies I Believed, but also would like to join me behind the scenes for Q&As, a free study guide, and more. To learn more and join the book launch team, you can visit coachingwithalyssa.com/book. Can't wait to meet you and see you inside.